Put a finger down if ever while reading MDZS for the very first time you were hoping and praying to get to a present day chapter because all of the chapters taking place in the past are so painful and so traumatic that you really needed some respite from that, and then you actually get to one of those chapters and you're really happy about it, but then that chapter ends up hurting you more. To be fair, I really thought after chapter 18 I was just safe. I just thought, what else could happen? Everything bad has happened. No, it hadn't. From here on out, I'm just going to assume every chapter is going to hurt my feelings. That is probably the safer assumption. Anyway, hi, my name is Cranes. I am reading MDZS for the very first time and I haven't watched the Untamed, so please no spoilers. I just finished the first part of chapter 19, which was the second siege of the burial mounds, and featured the Wen clan remnants returning to save everyone in the cave, and also Wenning then trying to scoop up all of their ashes, which is... I'll show you a clip at the end of how I was doing when that was happening. Not well. I'm honestly not doing well talking about it. I just tried to summarize it again and I got teary-eyed. So all I can say about that is this moment where the Wen survivors come back out of the blood pool. The narrative structure of that, how you slowly realize it alongside Wei Wuxian and Wen Ning. And then you realize that you recognize the granny, and you realize that she was bludgeoned to death. And then Wei Wuxian gets a moment of thanking them. He says, thank you. And then they fall to ashes, which is heartbreaking on its own. And then Wen Ning just throws himself on those ashes, scoops them up. And then the young cultivators try to help him by emptying their own sachets and little sacks of medicine that they have, and try to scoop up more ashes for him and offer their help. It is the most hauntingly beautiful, most harrowing, but also most poignant moment of the story so far. I feel like I've spoken previously about how much I appreciate this book's capacity to show the ripples of past decisions through the story, of how kindness comes back at some point, of how cruelty, has consequences at some point. And these ripples, they go outward and they grow bigger as well. And yeah, this is not a ripple, this is a tidal wave of a consequence, but it is so nice and so important to see that Wei Wuxian's decision to save the Wen survivors, that all of that kindness that he showed them, all of the community that he built with them, the fact that he became one of them, that they were his family for a bit, that all of that comes back in this moment, in safety, in gratitude, in protection, even beyond death, even in death. It is both so important to see that Wei Wuxian's efforts were not in vain and that they still have a lasting impact now. And it is also, in my opinion, so important to see that somebody still remembered and cared for and missed the Wen survivors that were killed in the first siege on the burial mounds. And to me, this scene is story defining, particularly because the young cultivators then come to help Wen Ning. They are, to me, the key, the only solution we can have here in a situation where honestly, I don't know whose side I'm on anymore. Because I just feel like everyone's justified in their anger and in their hurt. Everybody's been through so much loss and pain, and I understand why people are upset, and I understand why people cannot accept Wei Wuxian anymore, and why Wei Wuxian thinks he has already paid for it, because he has lost his life, he has given all of his families up, and still there's no forgiveness, and there's so much resentment, because his emotions and the actions resulting from his emotions ended up costing so many people their lives. It's pain and loss and grief all the way down, on every side, wherever you turn. The only people able to break that cycle are the young disciples, are the young cultivators. While the older generation is obviously still bound by, these grudges they hold and the loss they experienced and the protocols they have to follow, the young generation, they seem like they have a fresh view of everyone involved, and they can act on their own morals, a sort of moral immediacy. They can look at the situation and look at what is right and what is true right now. They are not taking into account what happened in the past, with some exceptions, of course, because I think Jinling is one of the most tragic figures in this whole story. He's so young, he doesn't know how to navigate his grief, his obligations, his responsibilities, his relationships to his uncle, but also to Wei Wuxian and to Wen Ning, who I think he's starting to see are good people. But how do you reconcile that with the knowledge that they are the ones who caused your parents' death? So I think the reason why I got so emotional reading about the young generation helping Wen Ning scoop up the ashes was not because it was sad, but rather because it was hopeful. Because I have such high hopes for them. I have such high hopes that they will actually turn things around, that although they are the children of that pain and of that war, they might be able to end that cycle of violence. They have had their own experiences with Wei Wuxian. They were alone with him. They were taught by him to some degree. And they appreciate Lan Wangji and respect his opinion so much. And Lan Wangji has never wavered, not for a second, that he fully trusts Wei Wuxian, trusts him with his life, with his clan's lives, with everything. This was the other thing that I was holding on to in this chapter, was Lan Wangji's just silent support, just steadiness. He's such a rock for Wei Wuxian. The way they understand each other without words, the way that Wei Wuxian reaches for Lan Wangji in every situation where he might need help, that he's able to ask for help from him as well. That is something big. Wei Wuxian, who has been self-sufficient and always had to rely on himself, but here he relies on that collaboration. He actually relies on somebody else to get through this. That is something new for Wei Wuxian. Quick location change because I was running out of battery. Yeah, also Lan Wangji, this was the first time that we actually saw him declare himself. Not really out loud, but he very clearly picked a side in Wei Wuxian. He very clearly, in front of Lan Qiren, made obvious that he was on Wei Wuxian's side and he was not going to budge, and he was steady and trusted him completely. Not against his clan so much, but he was definitely stepping into like his moral truth and pursuing that and sticking by it and not questioning himself. I mean, yeah, emotionally he's definitely been there already, but seeing it like this in front of his own clan, in front of his own Lan Qiren, it just made a big difference to me. I have to say now, after talking through it and like reflecting on it a little bit, this first part of chapter 19 is one of my favorite parts of the book so far, maybe because it's so perfectly sketched out what to me is the core message of the books. And this core message is, to me, moral choices and moral decisions don't exist in a vacuum. They reverberate outward. Cruelty will come back to haunt you. Kindness will come back to save you. And in this chapter, Wei Wuxian experiences that in both directions. His cruelty comes back to haunt him in the form of the survivors of the Nightless City massacre, who, you know, still are clamoring for justice and want to see him suffer for his sins. But we also see again proof of his goodness, because he's a character who has always wanted to do good and who was really aiming to be kind. And his kindness, although he ultimately failed at it, or rather was failed, his kindness and his goodness wasn't undone, not at all. It lay dormant, and then in the end it rose. I just remembered that I started reading this book because I wanted to read a romance. Anyway, here's footage of me reading that romance. Wen Ning throwing himself at the ashes, trying to gather them up. The remainder of his clan. This fucking book, honestly. Fuck.